Okay, the first thing I want to show you is my local development environment. I use Laravel. Laravel is not sort of, it's a type of WAMP stack. So it runs Apache and either MySQL or MariaDB, which are very similar. I choose MariaDB because it's a little easier. A lot of the work I do is I design access databases, and it's easier to create a DAO table link to a MariaDB database rather than a MySQL. MySQL poses a few little issues like case sensitivity. Anyway, here within Laravel, this is a great tool because it has its own terminal. You can jump out to the root of your websites, and in addition to that, it has database access. So, for example, if I bring up a web browser, and then in Laravel just click on database, you can see it's bringing up phpMyAdmin. But in addition to phpMyAdmin, and this is a local environment, so I can just log into root with no password. But in addition to phpMyAdmin, it also offers Heidi SQL. So I can come down here and run Heidi. And Heidi's a little bit more versatile than phpMyAdmin, but phpMyAdmin is a little easier to get into. But it's nice to be able to work with the data directly like you can in Heidi. So sometimes I run that. Okay, so the main thing, of course, that I do from here is I run a terminal. And usually when I run a terminal, the first thing I do is I write in ls-l just to see what I got going on. And this is the project I want to work on here, Dailyberry. So let me change directory into that. And if I'm going to run my app, of course, I've already installed Breeze for login credentials. So because of that, I need to run npm run dev so that my application will run properly. And then while that's getting up and going, I'll open up another command line window so that I can run some other commands. One of the first commands I'll do, of course, is code space dot to open up Visual Studio Code. And this is my Laravel application that I'm calling Dailyberry. And I have some controllers that I've made. I have some models that I made. Some migrations that I'll show you real quick. All right, and of course the web routes and things like that. Okay, so now that I have npm run dev running, I have the dev server running, I should be able to now open up my application. So from here I can go to dailyberry.test. Oh, by the way, that's another thing about Laravel that's really great, is that it updates your hosts file for you. It even gives you a link directly to it. And as you can see, I have in here dailyberry.test and inventory.test and some other projects that I've been working on. And so rather than going to just localhost in the URL, you can type in one of those sort of fake domain names. And this is the application in my local environment. And Breeze has been installed, so I'll go ahead and log in. And on the local environment, I have this email address and just the word password as my password. But of course, that's not true out on the web. And this is basically the interface I've got so far. Now, this is an incomplete project. So I'm going to show you the flavors list and the stores, but I don't have calendars or specials done yet. But the flavors list, and this is the one thing that's going to be different from the website that I showed you, in that the website, the user, who the owner of Sweetberries, she has to actually just type in each flavor every time for each day of the month that she wants to fill in. So what I did was I queried all that information that she's been doing over the years, and I found out how many times each of these flavors has been used, and I created a list. Now here in this screen, I can show 10, 20, 50, or I can show all of the 77 results. And when I do, notice I have a sticky header, and there's the flavors. And I can also search for a flavor too, like if I want to search for anything that has the word almond in it. So there's that, I can clear that. I can do something like chocolate, or I can do chocolate with a wildcard chip. Now, there's nothing that has chocolate with anything in between the word chocolate and chip, but still, if there were, this would also find it because it does respect wildcard characters. Okay, so from here, I can also edit these records. So I can type in, something like this is Amaretto Crunch. Of course, I would put in a better description, and I would probably use proper case and proper punctuation. But you'll see the idea. So now the flavor is updated successfully. This is Amaretto Crunch. And go back to the flavors, and there's my... And if I go back to the database and open up the flavors table, of course I have to sort by flavor, and there's what I just wrote in, and it's now in the database. And speaking of sorting, you can sort this list by either flavor. Oops, it was already sorted by flavor, so there it's sorted in descending order. Or you can sort by item, number of times used. I didn't add a sort for the description, didn't feel like that was necessary, but I do very regularly create sort fields for the column headings. You can see I also am using pagination. If you're on all, of course there is no pagination. You can come down to the end and see that. But if you're on any of these other numbers, then there is pagination. Okay, so the other thing that I do have sort of complete is the stores. I do have the stores index done, but I'm going to take a different approach when you edit one of these. You notice that there's no delete capability on this one. There is on the flavors. In fact, let me demonstrate that real quick. I can add a new flavor. I can say something like test one. You can see I've been doing this a little bit, and then this is a test. Create that, and it adds it successfully. So if I go back to the flavors list, since T is kind of far down the alphabet, I should be able to see it near the bottom. And there it is right there. Or, of course, I could search for it. Just put the word test in, and there it is, and I can go ahead and delete it. It asks me to confirm. Notice I'm able to pass the name of the flavor to the confirm dialog box. It's not just generic. It helps the user understand what they're doing a little better. If I say cancel, it doesn't delete it, of course. If I say OK, then it's gone. So now if I search for test, I get nothing. Okay? So over here on the stores area, they have 3 stores right now. But I don't want them to be able to delete one. That would be kind of devastating. But if you edit one of them, then this is where she's going to add the flavors for the calendar. And I'm going to add some, again, this is an incomplete project, but I plan on adding like a random function where she can just randomly fill these in with flavors from the list. Or these here, they're text boxes now, but they'll be drop-down lists. Or she can type in a new flavor if she wants, or she can select one off the list for each thing. I'm also going to add holidays in here and a lot of other features. So those are on my my backlog. Those are user stories for my backlog. But for right now, what I want to do is I want to demonstrate for you the controllers and the models that I used to get me this far. So getting back over here to code, VS Code, I want to start, I guess, by showing you, the web routes. Okay, so these are my resource controllers. I got the flavors and the stores, and eventually going to do calendars and specials as well. Even though within the stores, I'm going to let them update their calendars and update their specials from there. But if they navigate to a calendar's URL or a specials URL, they can then select a store and edit it that way. But these are the 2 routes that are somewhat complete. And notice here I'm using the only function because I don't need all of the functionality of a resource controller. I only need those for the stores. So let me close that up and go to my flavor controller, rather. And here's the index, and this is the information that kind of makes the sorting and the filtering work. Now what I did, of course, to make this work, especially these query functions, is over here in the flavor model, I wrote some scope functions. Scope sort and scope flavor dates. Scope flavor and scope sort. The flavor dates, this is actually part of the eloquent one-to-many relationship. Each flavor date has many, each flavor can be included in many flavor dates. So that's what that function was for. But these 2 scope functions, they are what allow the flavor controller to simply query the database by telling it what they want, what I want to filter by, or sort by. And then, of course, I have a direction string for ascending or descending. And then I pass that all to a function that I wrote down here, which calls those queries again and calls the get function on that. So I do have a pretty good notion on how to build a controller. Down here is just the create view, and that's not a big deal. That's the one where I added that new flavor. And then the store function puts it in the database. And I have rules for validation and even custom messages for validation. Now, of course, I don't have much for validation. I only have one field that's required, but it also has to be unique. So let me go demonstrate that real quick. If I were to go ahead and add a new flavor, and let's say I wanted to add butter pecan. I know that's in there, right? And I won't even write a description. I'll just try to hit create. And it comes back and tells me that flavor is already in the list. And you can see that comes from right there. Okay, so that's a little validation attempt, or not attempted, validation functionality within my controller. I did give you a quick peek of the model. Here's the flavor model with some scope functions and some eloquent relationships. And here's the flavor date model, also with eloquent relationships, these two here. Every flavor date belongs to one store or belongs to one flavor, because they're, oh, I forgot to show you something. Let me back this up. I hope this doesn't mess up the flow of the video too bad. But one of the things I do is I use this app that I found recently called quickdatabaseddiagrams.com. So I'm going to try that. I'm already logged in. And these are basically my different projects that I'm working on yet. With the paid version, I can have up to 10 diagrams. With the free version, you only get one. So I went ahead and got the paid version. And then down here under the Daily Berry, this is the main diagram I'm working on. And if I go over here to the file itself, this is how you create these. You just write in the table name and a couple of dashes, and then your fields, and you give it some information, like this is an integer field, it's primary key, and it's an identity. Here's the store. I don't usually use the word name. A lot of people would use the word name here and here. I usually use the singular version, of the name of the table. It's a little odd getting used to, but for me it works better, because sometimes when I write in code, the word name can be very ambiguous. This way I know it's the store name or it's the flavor name. Anyway, then you add the other fields, and again, you tell it whether you want it unique, you tell it what the field sizes are, and things like that, whether or not it's nullable, if you want to add a default value, and it creates this diagram here, which I think is really neat. So I didn't have to create these boxes. It did that all just by me typing this stuff in. As far as the relationships go, these relationship lines here, notice there's a little circle there. That's because I told it this is a 1, 2, 0, or many. So every one flavor doesn't have to have a flavor date, but if it does, it can have multiples. Same thing with the stores. Every store doesn't have to have any flavor dates, but if it does, it can have multiples. And then this one here is a 1 to 0 or 1. So that's because I don't want it for every store. I only want one record if there's a record at all. So it's not a 1 to many. It's a 1 to 0 or 1. So anyway, that's a very quick way of creating some diagrams. And so then when I come back over to create my eloquent relationships, I know exactly what I'm doing with these functions here, because I can just read it right off the diagram. Let me go ahead and pause the video, and I'll come back in just a moment.